Audiences don't give a damn about immersive tech. This is a bold statement, and I've got almost 18 minutes of your time to justify that standpoint. This is a rare and special treat. The reason it's quite rare is that typically we get just 10 seconds of an audience's time. Just 10 short seconds to convince a total stranger that what you've built with such devotion is worth their increasingly precious time. You may have all made your decision in the last 10 seconds about this talk, but the doors are locked, you're going nowhere, joke's on you. They're not, by the way. If there's a fire alarm, do get up and leave. So, why 10 seconds? Studies vary, but there is signs that this is actually how the decision-making process works. Your brain creates an emotional response almost instantly, and your conscious mind eventually rationalizes that decision with logic. And this makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. The early humans that stood around debating the intrinsic nature of the saber-tooth didn't trouble the gene pool for very long. And this is not down to shortening attention spans. This has pretty much been debunked at this point. What's actually happening is there's a much wider array of content competing for our attention, so we can afford to be more selective. So whether it's an email, trailer for a movie, or an intro to a video game, we're more quick to make that emotional decision and trust in that emotional decision. I've been in immersive tech now since 2012, which in tech years makes me 104. It's like dog years, but much, much faster. And for the longest time, for far too long, I wasted our 10 seconds talking about someone else's brand, someone else's technology, focusing on a very narrow aspect of our delivery. We lost our chance to make that emotional connection. We focused on the how when it should always be the why. Our customers didn't care about immersive tech. And we weren't alone. If you look at this list, the branding exercise must have gone along the lines of, well, here's this amazing new technology. Obviously, we're going to put those initials right in our name, even if it makes that name pretty much nonsensical. And we'll use words like immersive and augmented and virtual reality, all of our communications. And you better believe we're going to capitalize those words as well, with scant regard for readability or basic grammar. So this is akin to, in the 1980s, calling yourself Betamax Content Limited. The headline is the delivery method, and it says nothing at all about who you are and what you do. I may have lost some of the millennials in the room with the term Betamax. This was a device that allowed us to record and play back video on spools of magnetic tape, like Neanderthals. And that technology was eventually outsold and destroyed by the arguably inferior VHS cassette. It turns out that home video users don't care about the tech. The technology moves far too quickly to be a key part of what you do. This is 2 images of virtual reality, 30 years ago and now. And that seems like a long time, but it went away for a while. It's been moving so quickly, we can only imagine what the next 30 years will bring. I think the comparative scale of having this bread bin looking device on the left to having this portable lightweight device on the right, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens next. This is one of the biggest challenges we face as technologists and content creators, resisting that urge to jump on the new. We may feel that some technological advance is a key part of what we want to create, but your audience isn't going to jump necessarily onto that technology. You may be fascinated with the potential, but your audience has potentially just bought a new £800 iPhone, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. We should focus on the broad, unless we absolutely need the narrow. By choosing, let's say, PlayStation VR over iPhone, for example, you drop your market by up to 60 million people. Do we want to rethink maybe that advance in technology? At the end of the day, our bank managers certainly don't care about the technology. Before we get any further, a heartfelt plea. Can we please stop equating 360 video with virtual reality? While 360 video is amazing, it's no more virtual reality than traditional cinema. It's astonishing and it can do very powerful things, but virtual reality is interactivity. If you put on a headset and you experience a drama, you are immersed, but you're also excluded. Those characters don't care that you exist. And if they did, you couldn't do anything to change what's happening to them or even communicate with them in any way. If you cannot affect and impact a virtual world in even the most superficial way, it's not virtual reality. By the same token, this doesn't mean that immersion is just VR. You don't necessarily have to strap something to somebody's head to immerse them. There are many other ways. We worked with AVAF, a company called AVAF in Sheffield, to create a tank simulation for the National Army Museum. And they said to us, we need to show people what's it like to be in that space, to be in that cramped, confined space, and to work as a team to solve a problem. And I said, well, virtual reality. Of course I did. It's my go-to. And they said, well, there is another way to show people what a space is like. You can just build that space. So that's what they did. They built a tank. Definitely a different skill set to what we would have. But it's absolutely immersive. I was, in fact, so immersed in this bucket seat, it took 2 people to help me out again during testing. There are no joypads here. There are no clumsy controls. There's no headsets. There are virtual windows, or PC monitors to you and me, and real-world controls, built on Arduino using the Internet of Things and plugged into an advanced simulation that we built. People have to work as a team. 3 people work together to solve and finish an obstacle course. Not a headset in sight, but it is absolutely immersive. So if audiences don't care about the technology, what do they care about? Well, in immersive tech, the same things they've always cared about. They want to be delighted, they want to be entertained, educated, terrified. So these demands don't change just because we're going to immersive technology. Let's take an example of a well-loved character. Does everyone remember this character? Yeah. There's an instant reaction, an emotional and nostalgic reaction to this character. And when people encounter it for the first time, it's a really compelling narrative. There's an iPhone app that lets you put the very hungry caterpillar on your living room floor or on your coffee table, surround him with trees and delicious things to eat, multiple playthings to interact with, and you can nurture that caterpillar on its journey to becoming a beautiful butterfly. And if you look at the app listing, there's not a mention of augmented reality anywhere in here. Not in the title, not in the description. They've even removed the augmented reality backgrounds from these images. So it's experience first, creates a strong emotional connection to a well-loved character, and it keeps the immersive tech talk to tech blogs addressed to nerds like myself. So let's go back to that 10 seconds grace concept. There are 2 companies, in my view, who have absolutely revolutionized augmented reality wearables and are plotting the course to the future. Let's see how they used their 10 seconds.
I'm someone who gets pitched a lot. I've never seen.
So we know it's Meta because they spent 5 seconds on their logo. Let's see how the next one used their 10 seconds. Can you guess which one attracted the most investment? Meta created an incredibly powerful piece of hardware, but Magic Leap sold a dream. In another of their videos, you saw a gym hall full of children gasping in surprise as a blue whale splashes through the floor of their gym hall, crashing down, sending water, cascading over everyone. Never mind that in that video, not one of those children was wearing a headset. This is the prototype. Magic Leap said that potentially all the hype was too much. They could have done things differently. But all that hype generated money that took them from this to this. So it's fine to sell a dream as long as you can make that dream a reality. Whereas Meta, with an incredibly capable piece of hardware, were doing something in 2014 that, in my view, makes the HoloLens look a little bit outdated now. They really had amazing technology, but they were selling hardware, whereas Magic Leap sold the possibilities. This is my go-to when I'm talking about the use of immersive tech, or in fact, any tech. If we're not doing things better, cheaper, faster, or in a more user-friendly way, why bother? Sometimes we have to know when we can be replaced, when we're actually doing things purely because the technology is cool, and it is cool. So what can we do to make audiences care, to bring those audiences to that content when they don't care about the technology? There are many physical things that we can control about virtual reality. If you put a headset on and it's cold and sweaty from the last person who's used it, that's going to bring you out of the immersion. You're going to be very reminded that you're not in a virtual space. The straps, the sliders to adjust, fiddly sensors, and lots of cables. Too many cables. All of these things could pull you out of your virtual reality and remind you you're in the real world. There are also things within our virtual environments that we can control. A clumsily designed sound effect or a piece of incongruous user interface will again remind people they're in a simulation. So does this mean that we should aim for realism, total realism in our simulations? Well, the research says not, at least in education and training. The hardware and the software has changed significantly since this study, but the underlying facts have not. Long story short, it's more important for a world to be physically believable
than visually realistic. Let's take this example. If you reach out and take this ball in virtual reality and you throw it, you expect it to behave in a certain way. And if it does, you believe in that ball, even if visually it may not be as convincing as it could be. If you see an entirely photoreal ball,
you reach out and you pick up the ball and you throw it, and it just drifts away and bursts into a cloud of dust, you don't believe in that ball. Your immersion is broken. There's also such a thing as the uncanny valley. If we try to recreate humans in VR and we get close but miss, you could plot a graph, and as the realism increases, the association, the believability goes up. But when you reach a certain point, it drops. And we will accept this in films. We may blog about it, but we will get past it and enjoy the film. In virtual reality, you're very much involved and close up with that virtual human, and it can be very distinctly creepy. We will believe more readily in a talking dog in VR than we will in a slightly odd human. So what's going to happen? How is this going to change? How is technology going to advance our ability to immerse people? There are already headsets out there that have what we call inside-out tracking. So these are headsets that require no sensor setup and can theoretically take you anywhere. You could start your virtual experience at the beginning of a football field and keep walking. So the fiddly sensors, gone. Both of the big players already have mobile devices that are increasingly powerful, and there are wireless adapters for PC-based VR. That means you don't have to have your headset wired directly to your PC. Cables will be gone. There is already a commercially available human eye resolution virtual reality headset. So this will be able to recreate virtual worlds in an indistinguishable level of detail from the human eye. It's incredibly powerful. If anyone's tried VR and seen what we call the barn door effect, where you can see individual pixels, imagine that completely gone. The HTC Vive Pro has already got native hand recognition. So you'll be able to reach out and push buttons and pull levers. You'll be able to use gestures to control things. And it will finally have the side effect of making this stock VR photo pose actually make some sense. Optics technology is improving all the time. And while it may take a few years yet, I confidently predict that the headset too will be gone. As the technology improves, it disappears. It stops being there, and it stops being a barrier between your audience and your content. The audiences that will be entertained, engaged, terrified, and educated by the content of the future will not care about the tech. Not if we get it right. Thank you.